Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Confessions of a Celebrity Bodyguard. This is episode 9. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Celebrity Bodyguard. I'm Chuck Oliveris, and we are on episode 9. Last week, we jumped into me talking about my experiences working over at Jimmy Kimmel Live late night show for a couple of years. Talked about meeting Cher last week in the last episode and some other cool things that went on there at the show. Definitely one of my most favorite places I ever worked in Hollywood, and probably the most fun I had every night going to work. I mean, it was a late night show. I was the security manager for Jimmy. I had some security people there underneath me to wrangle studio audience and watch the green room and the lines outside of autograph seekers and so forth. So there was a lot to do there. My primary job, other than that, was to get the guests that were going to be on the show every night from the private parking lot and go in through the gate, escort them in. If they want to go sign autographs, we'd go do that. If not, we'd go directly to the green room, which had 3 dressing rooms in it where the talent would be housed until it was time for the show. Once the show started shooting, I would have a one sheet, which I've mentioned to you before. It's kind of a layout of the whole show. It tells me who the first guest is, the second, the third, everything that's happening right down to the end of the show. So I had a little bit of a timeline to follow, and then I had a walkie-talkie where the stage manager, my buddy Josh Waiter, would let me know when to pull the talent and head toward the stage for their interview. So that was my job every night, and you couldn't ask for a more fun job. We were talking about some of the different people we've had on the show there, and I know you want to hear some experiences and things. So we're going to start off this week talking about Gary Busey. Gary Busey, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, he has this reel that went viral where the guy is asking him about, talking about one of the awards he won, and the guy says something like, let's talk about your Ace Cable Award. And he goes, let's talk about buttered sausage. Let's talk about buttered sausage. What is it? What does it do? Get it out of my face. I don't know if you've seen this thing, but it's the most hilarious thing ever. And when I first saw it, I actually thought it was Gary, because Gary's a little crazy. Gary had a motorcycle accident a couple years ago. So it kind of bruised his brain a little bit, and he can be a little bit wacky. So when I saw this butter sausage reel, I was talking to my buddy Trevor Blue about it. We were rolling on the floor. And if you haven't seen it, look up butter sausage, Gary Busey, and I guarantee you'll be laughing your ass off. But in any case, Gary was a guest on our show. And of course, Gary Busey was a great actor. Now, he goes way, way back. This guy was in Stars Born with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson, the original one. He's been in a million other movies. If you're watching YouTube, there's a shot of him there. And that's actually from a movie called Point Break with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. He was one of the crazy cops in that movie. But I always loved this guy as an actor. And one of my favorite roles of his was in Lethal Weapon, the original Lethal Weapon. He played Mr. Joshua. And if you saw that movie, I don't know if you remember, but he burns himself with a cigarette to show how badass he is. And he's definitely the bad guy in that movie. So Gary Busey, quite a career. And of course, like I said, he's a little bit different now, but very interesting all the same. So when he came to the Kimmel show, I went outside and I got him and escorted him in, introduced myself to him and whatnot. And we had a PA on the show named Joey. And Joey she was a very good friend of mine, and she was going to assist Gary with anything he needed before the show and all this stuff. So I sent her back to his dressing room, and about 5 minutes later, one of my guys came to me and said, Joey's still in the dressing room with Gary Busey, and he's locked the door and he won't let her out. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I go over there, go into the green room, go down to the last dressing room, knock on the door. Gary, you got to let Joey out of the dressing room. She's got to do stuff for us. The show's going to start soon. Oh, yeah, no problem, no problem. Gary, open the door, Gary. Finally opens the door. She comes out and gives me this look like, fuck me, and walks by me. She said he didn't do anything weird to her or anything, but it was just strange that he wouldn't let her out. He said he just wanted to talk to her for a few minutes. And that was something we talked about the whole night. We're like, whoa, Joey got locked in the dressing room with Gary Busey. It could be a little scary, right? I mean, you guys have all seen Gary these days. Might be a little scary. Anyway, that was a funny night having him on. He's an interesting guy because when you're interviewing Gary Busey, he jumps in all the time on you, and he will bring up other things and go totally off of what you're talking about. And I think that's why that reel about the buttered sausage is so popular right now. So the next people I want to talk about, first one is Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown used to come to Kimmel all the time. He'd bring his brother Tommy. Tommy always escorted Bobby wherever he was going. Now, we all know about Bobby and Whitney and the drugs and all that stuff. But I have to tell you, for my personal opinion, as far as Bobby Brown, me and him one-on-one, the guy was always super kind to me, always gave me a hug, always happy to see me. His brother Tommy was a great guy. And he would come a lot and do things on the show, and his brother would always come with him. So I got to know those guys a little bit. They were regular visitors of Jimmy Kimmel Live. But one particular night we had him on, I guess Whitney decided she wanted to come with him. Now, I had never met Whitney Houston, but again, we all knew what a great singer, what a huge talent she was. We all know about her downfall and what happened with her. So it was interesting. So when I went to go get Bobby from the parking lot, Whitney got out. She had her sister with her. And it was not the way I wanted to meet Whitney Houston. She did not look good at all. She looked like she was on something. She did not have her regular hair. She had a wig on that was not put on properly, and it kind of looked like really bad. And I remember thinking, this is not what I expected, and I'm really kind of sad to see her that way. So anyway, as the show went on, Bobby was going to be the guest on the show. She decided at some point she wanted to come out of the green room with her sister and go have a cigarette in the back alley behind the studio, which is where a lot of people went. So I said, well, I can take you out there, honey. So I got her sister and I got her, and we go out to the alley, and there's a group of autograph seekers that we always kept behind barricades down to the right. In any case, she dipped into the loading dock behind the El Capitan Theater and smoked her cigarette, and people were screaming for her to come over because they saw her. And finally, she looked at me and said, fuck it, I'll go over there for a minute. And I said, okay. So I walk her over to the barricades where all these people are wanting autographs and stuff. And the first person to hand her something was some dude, and it was the album cover to the soundtrack of The Bodyguard. And it was really weird, dude. It was like she had to have been on something because she looked at it and she stared at it for a minute. And then she went to sign it and she signed her first name and she went, shit, that was 20 years ago. And she threw it back to the guy, turned around and started walking back to the studio. So we had to just follow her. So it was a really uncomfortable situation meeting her. I was kind of hoping I could have met her when she was in her prime. I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But it was definitely a bummer to see her like that. So Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston, we all know that didn't turn out to be a good thing. Super sad ending for her and her daughter. Bobby's still around, not sure what he's doing. But again, not the best thing in the world to experience when you think you're going to meet somebody that you've admired so long. So sometimes you just don't know how it's going to go. I want to talk a little bit about Donny Osmond. He's from my era. Donny Osmond and the Osmond brothers, of course, were famous years ago with their band and their TV shows. They even had a Saturday morning cartoon along with Michael Jackson and the Jackson brothers, who also had, or the Jackson Five, who always had their own cartoon and their own shows and stuff. But I grew up with Donny Osmond, Marie Osmond, and Merrill, and all that whole family. Very wholesome Mormon family, as you know. And Donny, of course, is a little bit older now, but he's still doing shows, sometimes with his sister Marie. For those of you watching YouTube, here's a shot of Donny when he was young. And that's the Donny Osmond I kind of remembered growing up with. Really good kid, super talented and stuff. And of course, today, you know, he's a grown man with a great family. And the thing I want to tell you about this is Jimmy decided I want to bring on Donny Osmond because he's kind of like the good kid, America's sweetheart, the one guy who was famous and never got into drugs or did anything stupid or anything like that. So he said, I want to have him on and do something fun with him. So Jimmy thought it would be a good idea, since everybody thinks Donny Osmond is the nice guy, that we would put him on a motorcycle. He'd sit on the back. Jimmy would drive the motorcycle, and they would drive down Hollywood Boulevard and start throwing things at people. But Donny would be the one throwing it. One of the things was a full glass of ice water, and he'd roll by, and the cameras would roll, and he'd just drive on the motorcycle, and people look and see it's Donny Osmond. He'd throw ice water all over him. He'd be like, "What the hell?" And I forget, they had a bunch of little things for him to throw at people and stuff. But the most hilarious part about that is Donny Osmond is not that guy. He would never do anything like that. So that's what the whole shtick was supposed to be about. And I really enjoyed having him on the show. And the fact that he was game to go do that was pretty cool. The day he was on that show and I had to bring him over, we had put him up at the Roosevelt Hotel right next door. So I had to go get him. And that was a very special moment for me because, like I said, I grew up with him. So when I went to get him from the Roosevelt, he came down to the lobby, he introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I'm going to walk you over to the studio. It's right across the street." And we started walking and talking, and I started asking him about his family, and mostly his mom and dad. I said, "You know, I grew up with your family." I said, "You guys were always such a national treasure in my eyes." And he just was so polite, so cool. And he talked about his mother very dearly. He was very close to his mother and father, as most of you may remember. And so I had that few little moments with Donny Osmond that I thought was pretty cool. And I'll never forget it because it was just like talking to my neighbor, except I knew his life and everything about him. And that was just like a really special time. Get a little sip of my water. So yeah, Donny Osmond was cool as hell. I want to talk about the Jimmy Kimmel Green Room. I promised you guys we'd talk about this. I'm going to tell you why it's so special, because the Green Room at Jimmy Kimmel Live, everybody in Hollywood wanted to be a guest in that green room. So the building, I've told you before, is an old Masonic temple or something, but in the basement is where the green room was and the dressing rooms. And we had a back hallway we would walk everybody through when the celebrities showed up for the show, take them right into that basement, into the green room and into their dressing room. But the thing about the Kimmel Green Room, most green rooms, if you go on a TV show like David Letterman or The Tonight Show, the green room is like a little small room with a couch and a bunch of monitors so you can watch the show in progress and see when you're coming up, and then they come and knock and somebody escorts you to the stage. Our green room had monitors everywhere. It was very, very cool. When you walked in, there were pictures lined up along the wall with little bar tables and chairs. Of course, the pictures were Jimmy Kimmel and the guests that had been on the show. The dressing rooms were to your right. There were two to your right, one to the left that was kind of hidden in the back, and that was usually for bands. But we had video games in there. We had a pool table in there. And there was a point where they didn't really show the green room ever until later, seasons later. I think even after I was gone, they started shooting in the green room in between commercial breaks and stuff for people to see who was coming on next. As an example, if you're watching YouTube, here's Mila Kunis in the green room getting ready to come out and be escorted to stage. And you can see it says up next Mila Kunis. Very cool green room. There's a bar in the back of that green room. That bar was tended by a bartender. It was a couple different people that did it, but there was always someone there tending the bar. You could get drinks over there. Anything you wanted, you could get in that green room. There was food catered there every night. In one of my episodes, when I was talking about some of the private parties I did in Malibu and, excuse me, up in the Hollywood Hills and stuff like that, that was because of the guy who did the food in the green room at Jimmy Kimmel. He knew me from there. He hired me out to do these celebrity parties. So it's all about who you know, right? In Hollywood and everywhere else, pretty much. So they had really good food in there. You had a full bar, monitors everywhere, beautiful couches, and you could watch the stars coming in and out that were on the show being escorted into their dressing room and so forth. Some of the celebrities would go into the green room. I remember Robin Williams. I told him, I said, I don't know if you want to go out there, because he wanted to grab something to drink from the bar. And I said, I don't know if you want to go out there. It's pretty packed in the green room tonight. I said, that's totally up to you. And he said, no, don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm fine. He did not mind mingling with the people. He went right to the bar. I think he got water. And as he walked back through, some people said, hey, can I take a picture with you? Nobody asked him for an autograph. They did ask for a couple pictures, and he gladly did it. He was very kind to everybody. There were a few celebrities that didn't mind being in there. And I want to say it was not Judge Judy, Judge Melion from one of those court shows. She was a hoot. As soon as her segment was done on the show, I'd go to escort her out, and she goes, no, I don't want to leave. I want to go in the green room and have a couple of beers. And I thought, that's great. Judge Million throwing down beers in our green room. So it was a pretty special place to be. Excuse me, you'll never know what you see in there from night to night, because it's kind of a clump of people that were either guests of Jimmy's. I had my family in there. If you worked on the show, you could totally have somebody come in and be a guest in the green room, granted that there was room for it. If you're watching YouTube, there's another shot there. The bar is very back, in the very back there by the bar. And like I said, pretty cool place. It was almost like being in a little nightclub there, which I always thought was kind of neat. And we'll talk a little bit more about the green room in a minute. I want to go to a special story to tell you about. So the studio there on Hollywood Boulevard on the roof, you could go up on the roof from Jimmy's private area on the 3rd floor, and you could look down at Hollywood Boulevard. You can see everything. And of course, like I said, it's right next to the El Capitan Theater. So that roof, we used it a lot. Jimmy had a private gazebo up there with chairs and a table. And sometimes he'd sit up there with his writers and they would work on the show, or he would just go relax up there and party at night with some of his guests that wanted to stay and chill and hang out. If you're watching YouTube, there's a little shot of Jimmy on the roof next to the El Capitan. Of course, that's a promotional shot for the show. But it was a pretty cool spot up there. So I had this really great experience one night, and I had already worked there for a little bit, but we wanted to go up there after the show to his Man Show bar, which is on the 3rd floor there. And again, it's only something you can be invited to. But we wanted to go up there and have a couple drinks after the show. So we did, me and a couple of my buddies from the security crew. And my buddy Mike was bartending Jimmy's private bar up there. And we were all chilling out. And I think Sarah Silverman, Sarah was there. Huey Lewis had done the show that night. Huey Lewis and the News had performed in the lobby with a live performance and all that. And Huey and Jimmy Kimmel are really good friends. Jimmy used to fly out to Montana and do fly fishing with Huey all the time, because Huey had a place out there in Montana. So he would do the show a lot, and they were very good friends. And he'd usually hang out afterwards with Jimmy and some of the other people. But that particular night, we all decided to go up to the roof. Huey, Jimmy, Sarah Silverman, a couple of his writers, me and my buddies who worked on the show, a couple of the stage managers and stuff. And in any case, at one point, I'm standing there just adjacent to Sarah and Huey and Jimmy, and somebody pulled out a pipe, and I'm going to say it was probably Sarah because I didn't see anybody else who had anything, but it was a pot pipe with the bowl in the middle and then four pipes coming out of it like that, like an X almost. And they asked me if I wanted to hit, and I said sure, because we're all standing up there, we're kind of partying after the show. So I go to hit the pipe, and we're all hitting it at the same time, and I'm like, and as I'm hitting it, I look across, and I'm looking at Huey Lewis hitting his pipe. Sarah's on my right, and Jimmy's on my left, and I thought, how freaking cool is this? I was smoking this four-way pipe with Huey Lewis, Sarah Silverman, and Jimmy Kimmel on the roof of the studio on Hollyweird Boulevard. Those are what I'm talking about when I say memories that you just can never forget or replace. And Huey Lewis, great guy, Bay Area boy. Of course, I'm from the Bay, so big fan of Huey. So what a night for me, and what a great, great story to be able to tell, right? Yeah, that rooftop, that rooftop was fun, and we had a lot of get-togethers up there. My parents would come. I'm going to talk a little bit later in the next episode about a very dear friend of mine I met there who is still a dear friend, and I have some stories with him that'll crack you up. But the rooftop was where it was at, or Jimmy's area on the third floor for sure. The other guy I want to talk about, I did a lot of things with because him and his family came quite a bit, was Hulk Hogan. Of course, his real name is Terry. Everybody knows Hulk Hogan from the wrestling world. Uh, One of the things I want to tell you about him is the first night I escorted him to the stage, he was in front of me, and I was walking behind him to get him to the little back door that goes up some stairs, and then you come out onto the stage, and there's the audience and everything. While I was walking him to the stage, I remember being behind him, and his shoulders looked like a Mack truck as far as width and stuff. And I remember thinking, God damn, this guy is huge. And of course, he was bulked up and stuff. He was a wrestler. Uh, but I always liked him. He was always a nice man. We did a lot of things. His family had that. If you remember, they had a reality show. I think it was called The Hogan Family. And I want to say it was shot out at their house in Florida. What was sad about that whole thing is the family used to come with him all the time. So I got to know his wife and his son and his daughter, and they were just very, very friendly. They felt very at home at Kimmel because he did the show quite a bit. He was a really, really sweet man. The family was nice, but after that reality show, man, everything fell apart for him. And it was super sad because it was like a lot of them aren't talking to each other anymore. He divorced his wife. Um, and you got to kind of sit back and think that had to have been from letting those cameras follow them around, because I kind of think that ruins a lot of families. It almost ruined the Osbournes. I think it's just a little too much. So kind of a bummer about that. But one of the funny things I do remember when I took Hulk Hogan out to sign autographs out in the alley by the barricade, one of these dudes was like, "Hey, Hulk, can I have your sunglasses?" Well, if you know Hulk Hogan, he always has this certain pair of sunglasses. And he looked at the kid and he goes, "I'll give you anything, brother, but I got to keep these. I got to keep these." And I thought, that's his signature. He's not going to give away his sunglasses. So Hulk Hogan, Hulk Hogan's family, super fun, super sad that they're all kind of broken apart right now. So I'm going to go back to the green room for a minute. One night, my guys were saying, "Hey, Dane Cook's on the show. He's supposed to get inside, and they got to get him ready for his segment, but he's outside talking to Courtney Love, who was out in our back parking lot by the big concert stage that we used." So I ran out there to get him, and he's out there with Courtney, and she's checking out his new Jaguar or whatever it is he got. So we got Dane Cook inside, and here's my story with Courtney Love. So I got my security people in the green room. I'm standing by the door waiting to pull talent for the next segment. And I guess she lights up a cigarette in our green room. And it was funny because a bunch of my officers in there that were just in like suit jackets and stuff came running up and they go, "Dude, Courtney loves smoking in the green room. You can't smoke in the green room. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." I'm like, "You guys, she's not supposed to smoke in here. And you just go up and tell her. And they're like, yeah, but it's Courtney Love. It's Courtney Love. I don't want to say that to her, this and that. So I said, okay, you guys, let me show you how this is done. I said, watch me. I walked right up to her. She's sitting down in a little chair. She got her smoke in her hand, puffing it. And I go, oh, excuse me, honey. You can't smoke in here. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. I'll put it out right now. I'm so sorry. I go, no, it's okay. I go, I just had to let you know it's a fire thing, blah, blah, blah. Come back, walk over to my guys. I said, that's how you do it. They're just people. Treat them like people. And she was very kind about it and stuff. And I thought that was kind of funny because I know everybody gets frazzled when it comes to celebrities. Oh, I don't want to tell them that. In fact, there's only 2 people we let smoke in that green room and in the dressing room. And it was because you couldn't tell them no. And that was Slash from Guns N' Roses, because he's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth every 5 minutes, and John Cougar Mellencamp, or John Mellencamp as he's called now. You can't tell those guys not to smoke. They're constantly smoking. And as far as pot and all that stuff, I'm going to say Damian Marley and his guys in the dressing room, yeah, you're not going to be able to stop them. So there was always a big cloud of smoke coming out of that dressing room when Damian would come and those guys would perform on the outdoor stage, which was a blast, by the way. And I love Damian Marley, and who doesn't love the Marleys anyway? But just an interesting story about Courtney I thought I'd share with you. We're going to talk now about another person here who I just adored. If you're watching YouTube, there's a picture of her right there with Jim. That young lady right there is Mickey. I want to say her last name is Marsalis. So Mickey is Jimmy's cousin. Jimmy's cousin worked on the show, and she still does. And she couldn't be a bigger sweetheart. And I had told you that a lot of his family was employed there, and she's definitely one of the ones that was employed there. So she is the daughter of Uncle Frank, Jimmy's Uncle Frank, the security guy, and Aunt Chippy, the lady I showed you who used to do all the little things on the show for Jimmy, who used to be married to Frank. So that's their daughter. That's Mickey. She's a sweetheart. If you're watching YouTube, you can see the smile there. Her sister, also very lovely. We used to do a lot of things with these girls. They were a big part of the San Gennaro Festival, which Jimmy would hold every year in the back parking lot where the stage was, which was a big Italian thing. And just really, really sweet people. So again, so nice to work on a show where the family was there. Travis Barker, Blink 182, I talked about him in a couple episodes because, as I said then, and I'll remind you, I did quite a few things with Travis for a long time. If you're watching YouTube, this picture is taken at Jimmy Kimmel Live because Travis would come and he would pretty much play with a lot of different bands. Whoever was performing, sometimes he would just be sitting in as their drummer for that night. And I always thought that was super, super cool. I mentioned this in one of the other episodes, but he had a few family members and buddies that were like family that were on an airplane that crashed. And there was this guy, Little Chris, and I talked about him before. He used to come with Trav all the time. And it was really sad when those guys got killed in that plane crash. I remember seeing Travis come back to Kimmel right after that. And he was really, really sad. So I always felt bad for him when he lost all those people. But Travis was a regular. He was there all the time. And it was kind of fun seeing him. I got to know him pretty good, and just a really cool guy. I have nothing bad to say about Travis Barker. We're going to talk about Mariah Carey real quick for a minute. So we were all excited because we were going to get Mariah Carey on the show. And it's like, wow, this is pretty big. So it just so happened that night she was doing a meet and greet across the street at the Virgin Mega Store next to the Kodak Theater. So we needed her to get done with that and get over to our show to be able to get her on her segment on time. So we had a one sheet, as I was talking about, and we had her plugged in at a certain place, but she wasn't getting there yet. And we kept going up to the roof that I was telling you about, looking over and seeing if her Rolls Royce was still parked in front. And that's how we knew she was still over there. So the long story short on this is we started rolling on our show at 6 o'clock. Still no Mariah. She's supposed to be the big name for that show that night. So Jimmy's winging it, and they're going through the other guests. They're moving things around. We're still waiting. Where's Mariah? She's still not here. Still not out of the Virgin Megastore. Waiting. Everybody's on pins and needles. Is she even going to show up? Because at this particular time, Mariah Carey is the kind of chick that would be like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't think I'm going to go. Well, she did end up coming, and it was like, boom, last minute. She rolled in the back alley. We literally pulled her out of the Rolls Royce right through the backstage door to the stage where she went out and did her quick little segment with Jimmy. I don't believe she actually sang that night. I think it was just an interview. But everybody was like shitting their pants thinking, oh my God, we already announced we're going to have Mariah Carey. What if she doesn't make it? Well, she made it by the hair of her chin. And so we got lucky. But that's the kind of stuff with late night that you trip about, because sometimes these people, they just don't, they either don't show up. There was a night we had Vivica A. Fox, if you all remember her. So she was Will Smith's wife in Independence Day. So Vivica A. Fox came on the show one night, and it was crazy because Jimmy started interviewing her. I escorted her to the stage. Apparently, she had already told him ahead of time, please don't mention this or this or this. Well, Jimmy, being funny, he found a way to weed whatever the topic was in, and she lost her shit on air for a little bit, and they cut to a commercial. And when they cut to the commercial, she ripped off her microphone, threw it on the couch, and started cussing out Jimmy and walking out of the theater, down into the green room to grab her stuff from her dressing room. I escorted her out, and the whole way out, she was all fucking asshole, fucking piece of shit. I never saw anybody get so ghetto quicker than anybody than when she did. And I just kind of laughed about that because we were all in the green room and everybody was going, what happened? And I said, I think Jimmy pissed off Vivica. So when I got her out to the parking lot, put her in her car, and she rode off. They come back from commercial break, and Jimmy's sitting at his desk, and he's like looking at the camera, and he's pointing to the chair next to him where she was sitting, and he's going like, I don't know. She's not here anymore. I don't know. It was the funniest thing in the world. I don't think she ever came back on the show after that, but these are some of the things behind the scenes, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy. We got a lot more stories for you. Hope everybody had a great week. We're coming back next week with more from Jimmy Kimmel Live, more stories, more celebrities. I have some interesting stuff next week I'm going to share with you. Want to thank Spotify once again for the platform stuff, and all you guys for coming back every week and listening and watching the show. Have a great week. I'll see you next Tuesday.